I start from what I was very interested yesterday. It's the fact that we are seeing a lot of things all the time. We are informed about all the problems of the planet, and we have empathy, or we can feel some of these problems. But at the same time, we are filled up with contradiction. And you didn't say that like that, but you say we have shoes from China made by kids, and I mean, are we human beings that cannot feel anything because we are so hypocrite or so?
Well, I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Tilly?
It's not about me, but I can tell you what I think. I think the goal is to find a way. I think people are like they've got stick by a mosquito like paludism. There is an epidemic of a sleeping epidemic that could be called apathy, and everybody is sleeping somehow. And I think we should find a way to wake people up and find a kind of anti-poison to fight against this paludism. So when you reflect about these things, I think you don't reflect in a passive way. You are maybe annoyed about. You can make constatations that people have become like that, but do you think there is a solution or waking up system or?
I think it's really complicated and sad, because I think the fact is so much of who we are. These are not just things. We are not just. I don't believe that human beings exist, and then we have a material world around us. We are like a superorganism, you know. I mean, the people in the Ukraine who are growing our wheat are part of how we're not self-contained organisms. We're not like a polar bear that goes around and hunts and fishes and sleeps and is self-reliant. We are like a superorganism, like a huge ant colony that's spread across the whole globe. And so in that sense, alienation is part of what we are. And the fact that the way we sustain ourselves and the way we live is dependent on other people's suffering, and that as individual human beings we have the capacity to know or have ideas about what's right and wrong, what we feel is right and wrong, and to regret and to feel sorry, and also to suffer as individuals. That's in contradiction with how we as a species coexist, continue, and that's, I think, very sad or very difficult, because we are at odds with ourselves. There's a part of us that knows, you know, I don't want to be consuming the labor of small children. At the same time, we have no choice if we are to wear clothes, and if we are to be able to go outside and live in a city. So I think that.
So we have no choice.
Well, I think as individuals, at the level of individual action, we have no choice, probably. But I think at the level of social action, of course, that's where change can occur. And I think we you know, that's why I made this comment yesterday, which was that we can't solve our problems as individuals by eating organic apples, or as I think it was George Bush 1 who said that we don't need programs to help the poor in the United States, because the United States has 1,000 points of light. The idea that private individuals and private charities would look after the poor, I don't think so. I think that's like saying we will solve our problems by, you know, we'll solve the environmental catastrophe by switching off our lights. And so I think we need social action, and we need political action, and I think, of course, we need to become aware. There needs to be maybe not an expose, but there needs to be what Herbert Marcuse and what Robin yesterday called a negation, a kind of an exposure of the way systems are working, and then a kind of in a negation of that system at the same time, so that people can start to think of other solutions and also start to wake up from what you call this apathy.
But you describe very much the propaganda. You describe very well the system of propaganda, and the apathy is also created by propaganda, and so actually it's not only on a political level. It's to point at how the propaganda machine works, and maybe how people are.
Yeah, mean, the apathy.
Trapped.
I think storytelling is bad storytelling is part of the problem. I mean, I think advertising is an enemy. I think even when we know. I mean, we fetishize things that we know are haunted by suffering and blood, not because the advertising lies to us.
Yeah.
But because we as human beings are capable of having two thoughts at the same time. So I can look at my iPhone or this camera with which you're filming us now, and I can think, oh, that camera's made under horrible conditions, and the workers who are building the chips, the electronic chips inside that camera are exposed to awful chemicals, and the waste is poisoning a community. At the same time, I can look at that camera and I can think, wow, that's a great camera, I want that camera. And I can hold those two thoughts in my head at the very same time. So, and that's the same with Anwar, right? We see that at play in Anwar. He knows the propaganda film factually is a lie, that they've used to brainwash the society. At the same time, he knows it's a lie. At the same time, it makes him feel better.
But you are not interested.
So we're not consistent. We're not logically consistent.
But this moment, this unlogical consistency is a kind of things that go into each other. I mean, this is also what you're trying to describe.
Exactly.
This where they can make cohabitation, or they can be. So I mean, are you trying to be like these people are like lab? You have a lab and you have a microscope, and you try to describe this moment of ambivalence or ambiguity, or you know.
The only thing that I reject in this, yes, I mean, broadly speaking, yes, in the sense that. Yes, we should take care. We should really take care to explore these contradictions. It should be very important to understand exactly this gap between what we know and what we feel, between what we believe and what we know, between how we see ourselves and how we see ourselves, because we can see ourselves in different ways at the same time. And I think it's Wittgenstein who talks about different language games. And you know, one of the classic examples he gives is, how can you be both scientific and religious at the same time? And how can there be scientists who are religious? How can you believe in evolution as a scientist and believe in the Judeo-Christian God? And his solution is that actually these are two different language games. They're totally in contradiction with each other, and just like chess and football, we're not playing them at the same time. So we're playing and probably when we play, and here we go to Rousseau's point that reason, the better part of most of reason is rationalization. We're probably playing one at some moments, another at the other moment. It's a matter of expedience. It's a matter of what serves us best as a survival strategy. So Anwar at some moments finds he's served by playing one language game, at another moment another, and that's how I think we all function. So when we're voting, or when we're going to a protest against global warming, where we're demanding carbon controls, we're playing one language game. When we're going out the next moment buying a ticket to, I don't know, a ticket to India to go to an ashram where we're going to spend
to conference.
we're going to go to an ashram in India and spend a huge amount, burn a huge amount of carbon getting there. We're playing another language game, and these two seem to be apparently contradictory, but they're not. They're different games.
There is a moment when
and that movement. Who are we when we shift between those games? Because if I'm identified with one thing now and then another thing in a minute, who am I in the transition?
Yeah. This moment where we swap, let's say we can be totally opposite to our beliefs or our cause, or you have the feeling it is like that.
Well, I think you made this point. You asked me this question about whether the film is putting Anwar and the others under a kind of microscope.
It's scientific in finding this.
In a way, I mean, I think that the method of necessity, the method I use of necessity, means that Anwar and his friends are constantly shifting games, shifting roles. Sometimes they're glorifying what they do, sometimes they're celebrating it, sometimes they're lamenting it, sometimes it's a very dark thing they're doing. And this forces them to keep swapping. And the moments more than ever when I think they're in between spaces are what's so important. You know, these moments where Anwar's lying in his bed thinking, or the moments where Anwar's watching the scenes.
Yes.
And he's thinking, how do I relate now to what I am in this image? And he says it's beautiful scenery, and one of the times he says it's beautiful. He's watching the cowboy scene. He says it's beautiful scenery. It's a magnificent. It's humorous. It's a beautiful family movie, even though it's about death. And then I ask the question: how will the children of the communists be able to enjoy this movie?
Yeah.
The children of your victims, will they be able to enjoy this movie? And his first instinct is simply to say yes, of course, because it's an enjoyable movie.
Yes.
But then there's a doubt. So these contradictions, these are the moments that really define, or not define, but constitute us as human beings and constitute Anwar as a human being. The only problem I have with saying we're putting him under a microscope is that I think the film also positions the viewer in that same constantly oscillating, constantly shifting space. And so we cannot say that, I like that you set up this camera and then you sat down next to me in front of it, because the camera is a mirror for both of us.
I'm trapped with you. And
our dialogue. Yeah, well, it's not, you're not a scientist gazing at me. And I think that's what I'm trying to say here, is that the viewer is not looking at the characters from without. The viewer is actually also, I think, going through a kind of a roller coaster, a kind of wild shifts between the absurd and the horrifying, between empathy and repulsion with Anwar.
But at the same time, to be honest, if I can now, there is a distance. I don't feel, these people are from another continent, so I don't feel, I don't feel they talk to me like, I mean, I can see my father, he was military and stuff, I can see him in the personality, but at the same time I feel a distance. To be honest, I'm going to piss you off now. I will ask, what is, don't you think your film is a bit like Buena Vista Social Club?
No.
At some point,
No.
It's a character, this old man having fun?
And no. No. I don't.
That's good.
Not at all. I think that Buena Vista Social Club is sentimental, and I think The Act of Killing is not sentimental and resists sentimentality. And I think, they're old men and they're not from European or country or from the United States, but apart from that,
they like music, they like,
but don't you like
in a way, what I think when I see your film, I think that these people, they seem to be a good company, in a way.
But that's good. But
I'm alone in Denmark, I don't have friends.
But the difference between the Buena Vista Social Club and these people is the characters in the Buena Vista Social Club are also good company, but they didn't kill thousands of people, and they haven't built a whole society based on the construction of fear around what they've done. And I'd say another thing, I think it's revealing that you choose such a mainstream and dull documentary as your question. It's because you don't watch enough documentaries or non-fiction films, so you choose such a shitty example.
I know this I should not have asked, and it was on my list.
No, it's alright. Yeah, you shouldn't have asked. It was
you will remind yourself, and I will not. Yeah.
No, you didn't put it in. I want this.
No, but in a way, I get
this interview up. I want that question.
It's because I mean I am living in Denmark. I'm lonely. I have no friends. It's cold, and then I see this film. And actually, you say they are killers, but I'm not sure if they are killers. I mean, you say they are killers, and they say they are killers, but they are acting so much that I'm not sure. I mean, when I see them, I was going to Google Congo, to see how it looks in real, because for me, I'm not sure if they are killers. They are so sympathetic,
But now I think you're contradicting what you said before, which is that you didn't feel for them.
I didn't?
You said you didn't feel for them.
Feel?
You didn't feel for them.
Yeah.
But now you're saying they're so sympathetic and you envied their kind of bonhomie, their kind of...
bonhomie, yeah.
And I think that shows that actually you did feel for them. And maybe, So I don't really know. I can only say everybody's reaction to the film
Yeah.
is their own, and every viewer in a way is making their own film.
Yeah.
And that's very fair, and there's no right and wrong, and there's no wrong way of seeing my film. So however you saw it is perfectly fine, Tippy.